All right, everyone who is in the waiting room is in the meeting now, so whenever you guys are ready.
Thank you, Jessica. So good evening, everyone. It's good to see you once again. Welcome to another interesting session. We're going to continue looking at UTC 4 Module 4, which we began in the last session. If you remember, we were looking at core counseling skills, and we have been doing well. Last class, we practiced several of the methods of evoking change. We also discussed how to respond to change, and we started looking at some of the skills or techniques that we can use. And in the last session, just before we left, we looked at using the readiness ruler. Today, we want to begin by looking at yet another tool that you can use. It's an MI tool. We call it decisional balancing. Now, who would like to tell us what they think decisional balancing is? Yes. What do you think decisional balancing means? Any hand that's raised? Or any chat?
No hands yet, but...
Any chat? Anybody? Yes. What do you think decisional balancing is? Remember, we are learning, so make mistakes. It's part of the learning experience. And if you don't want to define decisional balance, you can actually define decision. You can also define balance, or either. Anybody wants to give it a try?
Oh, we have some in the chat. People are saying weighing pros and cons or having to choose between different options.
Very good. Weighing pros and cons and having to choose between different options. That's excellent. So decisional balancing is exactly about having to choose between options. Now, the whole idea about balance, and I want you to demonstrate what balance is. I hope you can demonstrate in your space balance. You know, what do we mean by balance? We're trying to ensure, so we have got different options, and the different options have different weights. And so when we talk about decisional balancing, we want the client to look at the different options and weigh them so that they can be able to think what is best for them. So I'm going to go to the next slide. Decisional balancing is a process. It's a process of appraising or evaluating the good aspects of, on one hand, substance use, which gives you the reasons not to change, and then on the other hand, the less good aspects or the reasons to change. Now, remember, our clients love using the substance, or our clients are using the substance, though we know there are lots of negative impact of substance use. Our clients do perceive certain benefits in using substances. We want them to make a decision to choose between continuing to use or making a change and moving away from using substances. Now, for us to do that, when we use decisional balancing, we want them to evaluate, we want them to appraise, we want them to gauge two sides of the coin. On one side, the good aspects, and you can see we've put the word good there in quotation marks because it really means it's not necessarily good, but the client perceives it as good. And we are saying that those good things, in quotes, are the ones that keep the client using, are the ones the client will justify for not changing. For example, they'll tell you that when I use drugs, I'm assured of having company. I have got some good friends I hang out with. I'm able to face the challenges of the world without having too much to worry about. I'm able to work through long hours of study without struggling. Those are what the client perceives to be good aspects of the substance or the substance use. But on the other hand, we also have the less good aspects. Please note from this slide that we are not talking about the bad aspects. This is because we don't want the client to become defensive. So we are not calling them bad, we are just saying they are less good. So we have the good aspects and the less good. So the less good aspects is what we shall build on as the reasons for changing. And you can see that balance. And this is just to tell you, if you remember what we said in the last class, Our clients are in this constant ambivalence. There is a pull and there is a push. On one side to change, on the other side to remain the same or to continue using. So decisional balancing will try and tip this balance in favor of change, in favor of beginning to stop using. When we use decisional balancing, what's our goal? We want the client to recognize and to weigh the negative aspects of substance use so that the skill can tip towards positive change. We also want to move the client from external motivation to internal motivation. I will not forget our participant last class who said that sometimes clients may tell us what we want to hear. That's true if they do not have internal motivation, and therefore decisional balancing is working towards helping the client create internal motivation so that they no longer have to tell us what we want to hear, but they tell us what they genuinely want to achieve. So we're saying that decisional balancing is a conscious linking of negative aspects of a situation. Now, the negative aspects of a situation could be costs in terms of monetary, they could be problems, or there may be other undesirable features. And this might just be the first time that the client is linking these things. That's why that picture there shows a chain link, you see? So the client has all these little chains, but they never thought that they are linked in any way. So when you give them a decisional balance worksheet to work on, they will begin to actually reflect on some of these problems and effects and features and costs and begin to see how they are tied. And this may just be the first time they are doing that. Now, it also consciously links the negative aspects and changes a person's perception of the situation. Now, that is important. So as the client links the different negative aspects of their life together and connects them to the substance use, that may begin to create or trigger in their mind a sense of dissatisfaction and some level of shortcoming, which they begin to pick or to discern. Now, this is important because what you're doing, you're triggering a kind of conflict in their mind. They probably never thought about it. They never thought about changing. But as you put these things together and they see the links, then they might just begin to be dissatisfied about their current behavior and begin to see shortcomings and begin to now consider contemplating, which is what we want to happen to our client. What are the objectives of decisional balancing? First and foremost, we want to emphasize the costs of the client's substance use from their own perspective. Now, this is critical. Remember, we have said the client does see some good aspects of substance use. We ourselves see all the negative aspects. So we want now the client to be the one from their own worldview to see the costs or what are the consequences the substance use has brought to them. Secondly, we want to lessen when possible, and please note when possible, because sometimes it may not be possible. We want to lessen the perceived rewards on the substance use. So the client will give you all these good things about the substance, and it is you to pick them and not necessarily inflate them. So we try to lessen these perceived rewards, but at the same time, we also want to do the opposite. The benefits the client brings out, we want to escalate them. We want to maximize them. We want them to look big. That's what we are saying. So we want to identify and minimize, if possible, any potential obstacles to change. So the client will typically bring out the good things about the substance in a big way. We need to lessen that. The client will try to minimize any benefit. We try to maximize that. And the client will bring you many obstacles. We try to pick them and try not to exaggerate them. We try to minimize them so that the client begins to feel convinced that they can make a change. So basically, what we do in decisional balancing, we want to list the pros and cons of behavior change. So on this slide here, we have got on one side the reasons to change, and on the right side, the reasons not to change. So we work with the client towards having them put this down, and the next sheet is going to look even better. So you can see on this slide, we have got the behavior that we want to change. Remember, we can use decisional balancing for any behavior that we would like the client to change, or the client is working on changing, or we ourselves are working on changing. So in this case, it is substance use. So on one side of this sheet, which we actually give to the client and we work with them, we ask them to put on one side On the left hand side, we have got the changing. On the second or the right column, we have got not changing. So the balance is between changing and not changing. And what are we changing or not changing? The behavior, which is substance use. So on the left side is we want to change. On the right side, we don't want to change. And then we are asking, supposing I change, what will be the benefits? Supposing I change, what are the costs? Because even changing has got a cost. On the other hand, supposing I don't change and remain the same, what are the benefits and what are the costs? So you can see that you help the client to list everything in a very objective way. And because it's coming from them, as they are doing this, they are reflecting. They are beginning to see connections. They are beginning to see the cost of the substance used to them. So that is what we are saying. So changing, we have got the pros. Not changing, we have got the cons, or what we would think are the costs of changing. On the left side, the pros or the benefits of changing, and of course the cost. So this is a balanced, very balanced sort of way of helping the client to objectively look at their substance using behavior. Please remember, you facilitate them. Sometimes when I have used this tool, some clients are not motivated to feel it. So sometimes what you do, you can actually have the worksheet and you ask them and you write as they speak. Sometimes some are motivated, they want to do it themselves. Some even want to carry it as homework and bring it done. So adjust it accordingly, depending on your client's motivation. Now, we also want to note that a decision balancing list is a written list that can help clients quantify the factors going into any decision about change. When the client sees a long list of reasons to change and a short list of reasons not to change, they may finally shift the balance towards changing. At the same time, if they see a long list of reasons not to change and a short list of reasons to change, they can actually tell you, or that can communicate to you, that you still have to do a lot of work. A lot of work means, triggering, evoking them to start thinking of other things that they probably haven't thought about. And this we can do using the techniques that Moses taught us in the last class about evoking change. So our business is to build and tip the balance in favor of change. The client won't begin by speaking in favor of change. They will just be spilling out what they think are the benefits and the costs of remaining the same or of changing. It is us who pick them and highlight the things we want to bring out. It's us who will pick the change talk and actually create the bouquet that we talked about. Please note, and this is a very important slide, it isn't just about the numbers. Someone may have a long list of benefits of using the substance and a short one of costs, but the implication of those two costs is so high that its weight is much more than the long list. So this is what this slide is saying. So the number of items in each column is not the only important things, because you may have one or two reasons not to change that may outweigh dozens of reasons to change. For example, if your client tells you, it is only when I use substances that this is a person that lives in the streets. I live in the streets, I don't have a family, I don't have a home. It is only when I use substances that I can fit in the group that gives me space to sleep, that gives me food to eat. Now, you know, those are only two reasons, but their weight is extremely heavy. So we are being challenged here to reflect about not just the number of items on the list, but the magnitude of the impact of that reason that the client gives. Now, how is this important to the client? The reasons for and against continuing substance use are highly individual. I think that's important for us to think about. It is important to note that factors that shift the balance towards positive change for one person may not necessarily be the ones that will do that for another person. This is just to talk about how we have got our own subjective realities. You know, how we perceive things is different. So for me, having a sickness might be a big motivation to make me want to change. For another person, having that same sickness may not be a big deal. So that's why we are being challenged to reflect on what is the personal meaning of the factors that the client is telling us. For one client, just keeping their family. In fact, I have met clients who say, the only reason I came to treatment is because I want my wife back. It's because I want my fiance back. That tells you that for that client, having a fiance, having a wife is of important value. So we have to listen to hear what are the things that the client holds in high value, because it is those things that will actually motivate the client, and we can anchor our push for change around those things that clients are valuing. The other thing to note in bullet number 2 is that the reasons are often more emotional than they are rational. I think that's the same point. So what makes sense to you and me as should be an important factor is not necessarily so for the client. So you might be surprised that the client's reason for continuing to use the substance may be no reason for you and me, but for them it is a reason. So we have to respect that, because we want to meet the client at their point and where they are. The value or weight given to a particular item is likely to change over time. That's an important point. So at the beginning, the client may be very, very stuck on, I can't stop using alcohol. I'm going to stop using cannabis, but I'm not going to stop using alcohol. And they're very convinced because alcohol gives me a chance to have fun. Alcohol does this and the other. Well, at the beginning, remember rolling with resistance. You're going to roll with that. But as time goes on, the value and weight given to that particular item by the client is likely to change. So we won't give up. We will keep on revisiting it and checking where the client is in terms of change in their values for the items that they are associating with the substance. And that's what this slide is saying. That decisional balancing anchors a lot on the values of the client, because it helps clients to explore and articulate the things they value. Of course, a value. What is a value, by the way? I think it's good to reflect on this. What do we mean by a value? Yeah, what are values? Anybody can actually raise their hand or put in the chat. Yes, what are values? Yes, anybody who's raised their hand? Fatima?
Yes, values are those things that are important to us.
Very good. Things that we hold in high regard, things that matter most to us. So can someone give us one of their values in life? Yes. Anybody? Tell us. Yes, 2 participants raise their hand. Jessica, please unmute them. Who there?
Bolanle's hand is raised.
Yes.
Yeah, one is freedom. Freedom.
You value freedom. Thank you very much. Any other person? What do you value?
I value
Sorry, who's speaking? Mention your name first.
Fatima.
Yes, Fatima.
I said I value integrity.
You value integrity. Good. There is another participant whose hand is raised.
We also have Michael Izenzma.
Michael. Yes, Michael.
Yeah, I value honesty.
You value honesty. I think you all value education. That's why you're here late in the night. I don't know whether I'd be wrong in making that conclusion. And that's good, because there are lots of other people who are back home and wondering, why are you wasting your time and your resources and missing out on fun to go and study? So I do think the people in this class have some value for education and learning, and that's important. And that's what we are saying. What you value is unique to you. It may not be valuable to another person. And that's the same with our clients. Our clients' values will be unique to them, and we need to listen and hear what those values are. And the values will be reflected both in the reasons to change and in reasons not to change. Yes, Grace, I see Grace has raised her hand. Grace, please tell us your value.
Respect.
Respect, very good. Michael. Yes, Michael. Never mind, you can type it up.
I spoke already. Michael has spoken.
Ah, okay, very well.
I said honesty.
Thank you. There's one more participant whose hand is raised.
Paul has his hand raised.
Yes,
Paul?
hard work.
Hard work.
Hard work.
Thank you very much. So thank you, and we can keep on chatting to share our values, and that's important. And as you listen to people's values, you realize how unique we are, and that tells you that clients' values will be different. Let's listen to hear them. Where do we pick them from? The second bullet says that values are reflected both in the reasons to change and the reasons not to change. So as a client does the decisional balance sheet, and they give the reasons to change and the reasons not to change, you will be able to pick their values. And I want to go back a little to the slide right here that we are seeing this sample of a decisional balance worksheet. Looking at this client who did this. Yes, let's look at this client. You can see their reasons for changing, the benefits of changing on the left-hand side here. These are the reasons for changing, or the benefits for changing. Can you pick a value here? Let's see a value that you see here from this table. What values do you think this client has from this table? Yes. Look at their reasons for changing. Two participants raise their hand. Jessica.
Yes. Yeah, one of them is independence. You said increased control over my life. Yeah, independence.
Yes, very good. So the client wants increased control over their life. So they value independence. Thank you. Another participant, what do you see here as a value for this client?
The client's love is health. He wants improved health.
Aha, so the client does value their health. Very good. Another one from this client?
Alera
Client
also.
values family.
Client values family. Thank you. Yes, another participant, Jessica.
Naporbu.
Clients value financial gain.
The client values, yes, their financial freedom is important to them. Very good. Now let's look at the reasons for not changing. Yes, the benefits of not changing on the right-hand side, the cons. What you can see now, the reasons here the client gives for not changing. So what values are reflected in these reasons for not changing? Kennedy?
Kennedy has already spoken.
Okay, so who has not spoken and their hand is raised?
I see Alera and Fatima's hands raised still.
Okay, Fatima, what do you see as valued by the client that makes them want to continue using the substance?
The client wants to have fun. He likes going to parties.
Absolutely. So this client values fun. And that's their entitlement. You cannot tell them fun isn't good. No. So that is their value. And you can also look at the costs. Look at the costs of not changing. One of them is disapproval from friends and family, which also tells you the client values family and friends. Money problems. So the client would value to be in a financially free environment. The job, they could lose the job. So they value their job. They value their close relationships. These are all things. On this other side, on the left side, the costs, you can see sleeping problems. That tells you this client does value sleep. So when we look at the reasons for changing and the reasons for not changing that the client puts down in their decisional balance worksheet, we are able to see the client's values. And those are the things along which we are going to anchor our statements of evoking change, our statements of sustaining change. That is important. And the last bullet here says, if clients can frame the process of change within the larger context of their values, shared with their family, community, and culture, they may find it easier to begin contemplating change. So if the client can now see that my substance use has affected my relationships with family, and I value my relationships with family. It has affected my job, and I would love to keep my job. You're actually helping them connect this use of substances to the bigger community, to the bigger context of the family, of the community, of the culture. And that is important. That's where we are going to anchor our talk, our change talk with this client. And that's unique because every client's values may be unique. So that's why we need to listen carefully to pick what is the one thing. Sometimes it is only one thing that the client will say that will actually indicate something they value, and you run with that. Sometimes I think about this the way we think in farming. You plant something and then the seed does not germinate, many of them, and then one germinates. And then you come and spot it and you start watering it and it grows and you move with it. That one seed, that one that has germinated is the one that you run with. So even in our client's talk, pick the values. Those are the things that you will grow the change talk around. So in short, or in summary, you need to decide on a format for your decisional balance. What we showed you there is a sample where you have got a matrix of 4, so that you have on the one side the reasons to change, on the other side the reasons not to change. And by the way, when we begin this exercise, we usually like to begin with the reasons not to change rather than the reasons to change. Because if you begin with the reasons to change, the client may become defensive. So they get surprised when you begin with the opposite of what they were expecting. So decide on the format, introduce the exercise and ask permission to continue, explain the format, and use open-ended questions and active listening. Now you know, we already know what open-ended questions is. We know already what active listening is. We remember reflections, etc. Now, when we start asking the client to list, remember to start with the reasons not to change, or the reasons to continue using the substance. And I have explained the reason is when you do that, they are likely to establish rapport as opposed to beginning with defending. See, if you ask them, so what are the reasons why you should change? I remember one client many years back that came to see me because of using cannabis, and I asked them, what are the things, that make them think changing is important? They said, I don't think there is any. I think that this substance helps me do A, B, C, D. So you see, they're beginning by telling me all the reasons why they should continue using. So let us start by asking them for those reasons. Those are the ones that they are eager to tell you because they want to justify their position. If you begin with the reasons for change, you might easily hit a dead end because they want to defend their position. So asking clients to express what they like about substance use will help establish rapport, will seem to lead clients spontaneously to talk about, finally, what is less good. So when they have told you all the nice things about the substance use, like that client told me, then I asked them, okay, so what then made you come to see me? And they said, you see, and then they started talking about the less good things. But already we had a relationship. But if they walked in and I start asking about the bad things about the substance, and by the way, sometimes we use the word bad things, they defend themselves and give you 101 reasons why the substance is good. So let's remember, begin with the reasons to continue using, or the benefits, and then the costs, and then we go to the other side. Supposing you are to change, what would be the benefits of making the change? What would be the costs of making the change? And this can be helpful to make the client contemplate. Please keep in mind, decisional balancing is not for everyone. For example, if a counselor tries to do decisional balancing with a client who's already made a decision to change, then they'll think you're wasting their time, they'll become impatient and frustrated. So it's important that we assess where the client is in. Decisional balancing is good for clients who are in the pre-contemplation stage, because those ones are still thinking there is nothing wrong. And by the way, let us remember, just because a client is in treatment program does not mean they have reached the stage of action. We have many clients who are in our treatment programs, maybe because they were forced by circumstances to come, whether it is family circumstances, health circumstances, occupational circumstances, etc., or even legal. And they could stick in our treatment programs for a period of as many as 3 months or whatever program duration, and they leave your center still in pre-contemplation. I had this young man that was in a treatment program, and he told one of my student counselors that I have kept some 5,000 Kenya shillings somewhere in my bedroom. I'm just waiting to leave this program so that I can go and relapse. Now, clearly, that's a client who is running through the program. The family was paying about 300,000 Kenya shillings, but they were preparing how to go and relapse. That tells you you're putting a lot of effort, but your client is still in pre-contemplation. So decisional balancing is good for clients who are still in the stage of pre-contemplation. So thank you very much. And then we will practice decisional balancing. There are lots of activities for you to do. You can actually practice with yourself with your children, with your colleagues, with whoever is in your space. And when you're teaching this, have people get into partner exercises and practice this, and then they switch roles. So thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask, stop sharing and hand over to Moses to introduce us to module 5. Thanks, Moses.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. We will now go on to module 5, which is with group counseling, the basic skills of group counseling. So let me share my screen. Okay, so while in module 5, as I said, basic counseling skills for addiction professionals. In this module, our goals are to provide an overview of the differences between individual and group counseling. And we also provide information on the phases of group development and the roles of group participants, and provide an opportunity for participants to observe and practice basic group facilitation. So this will, in a nutshell, will be our goals for this module. However, I want to stimulate this discussion on this topic. Please, can anyone tell me the differences between, or differences and similarities between group counseling and individual counseling before we move on? What are the differences and similarities between group and individual counseling? I want 1 or 2 responses before we move on, because it's important.
Fatima's hand is raised.
Okay, please, Fatima, thank you very much for being an active, very active participant.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Individual counseling is for one person. Group counseling is for people that are more than one. And the similarity between the two is that it's a counseling session for people. As we are counseling the one individual, you are counseling a lot of people too. You know, you exert almost the same energy when you are talking to one person or when you are talking to a lot of people. But basically, group counseling is for more than one person. A lot of people are there, and sometimes they could be arguing among themselves. You know, the group counseling may be a bit rowdy too, you know, than the counseling session, but than the individual counseling. But for the individual counseling, the attention of the counselor is concentrated more, you know, to a particular person.
Oh, thank you very much for that attempt. Thank you very much, Fatima. Does anybody want to attempt?
Yes, absolutely, sir.
Okay.
I raise my hand. When you talk about
Okay.
group counseling, it's usually a group of between 1 and 8 people with common problem. They have a common problem which the counselor wants to address. And because they have a common problem, you can attend all of them at the same time. It's not usually a big group sometimes, because it's between 1 and 8 people, ideally in group counseling. Whereas personal counseling has to do with one person and his personal problem, which you are trying to solve.
That's right. Thank you. Any attempts?
Yeah, Bola wants to speak.
Prof, please, let's hear the professor's stuff.
Well, I will talk about one similarity.
Okay, great.
And the similarity I'm talking about is the objective.
Good.
Both of them, that is individual or group counseling, they share a similarity where it is about addressing issues and problems. Thank you.
Thank you
We
very
have a
much,
common
Professor
objective of
Bola.
addressing problems.
Thank you,
Thank
Professor
you.
Bola. Thank you very much. So let's move on. In addition to what they've said, a group counseling helps the client feel that he's not alone. He or she is not alone in the group, and the group is also a natural laboratory for clients to practice new behaviors. And both types of counseling require core skills. If you recall, we talked about core skills. Yes, both types of counseling require core skills. And the focus is not just on the relationship between an individual client and the counselor, but also is between the client's relationships with one another. The clients are interacting with one another, and all of them are also interacting, as a group with the counselor. So there are multiple relationships when you come into talk about group counseling, and the process in the group is as important as the content of the group. So that's very interesting. I don't know. One thing that we need to know now that's very important is that group counseling is not the same thing as doing individual counseling in a group. We should note that. And using individual counseling skills in group may not always be effective. If you are bringing the techniques of an individual counseling session into a group session, you might not always be effective. And the needs of the group as a whole must be balanced with the needs of individuals in the group. We need to clarify this before we continue. And the group counseling includes good facilitation skills that enable the group to do most of the work. So you don't give them a lecture, you don't keep talking, but let them keep talking, and you only facilitate and ensure that's good. Thank you. Let's continue. We have said this, let's go on. What are the 5 learning objectives? Module 5, learning objectives. 1, describe the process of preparing clients for groups. And then number 2 is to describe at least 2 basic issues or tasks for each typical group phase. And then the third one is describe a basic way to structure a group session and list at least 3 ways to avoid leader-centered groups, and also to demonstrate ways of managing disruptive behavior in groups. So at the end of the module, we should be able to answer these questions. Preparing clients for group. We don't just bring people together into groups or force them into groups. We need to prepare them for group work. So it helps groups become more therapeutic more quickly. Researchers and people who are experts in group counseling, have discovered that and have written that preparing clients for the group helps them to become more therapeutic and they engage more quickly and has a positive effect on client improvement. So you have to prepare them and select. Pre-group meetings with clients. First of all, you have to clarify expectations of the client and of the treatment program. What does the client expect? To give you a clue, as to what he expects and the kind of individual, you'll be interacting with in the group. And then also the treatment program. What are the expectations of the treatment program? What does the client really expect of the treatment program? And what does the treatment program actually want to achieve by setting up group sessions? And set up basic ground rules. Because you can't just jump into it. You have people from diverse backgrounds, different personalities, coming together maybe for the first time, in a group. You need to get a set of some basic counseling rules for them. If you don't do that, then the group may not be manageable. Some people may want to dominate, some people may disrupt it, and then some people may just be quiet and be spectators. So there are basic ground rules to guide us so that people feel safe, to participate and to speak, in the groups, and knowing that whatever they say will not be criticized and it will remain there. So rules or ground rules are very, very important. When you say ground rules, then you find that it helps them to participate very well actively and explore the advantages of group therapy and correct any misconceptions about groups. There might be all kinds of misconceptions, coming from the clients, particularly. If you voice them out, then you should be able to clarify such misconceptions and prepare them for the group. I don't know what sort of group sessions you carry out in your own various centers, but that's up to you to think about. Assessing and matching clients to groups. First of all, consider the client's characteristics, the needs, preferences, stage of change, and stage of recovery. You don't just say, join this group when the client is still maybe undergoing detoxification, he's still psychotic, he doesn't even know where he is, and then you just ask him to join, him or her to join the group. No, it doesn't work that way. So what are the characteristics, what are the needs, preferences, and it is stage of change and stage of recovery. The program's resources to conduct such groups, very important. And the nature of the group or groups available. But there are different groups available. Different settings have different groups. It's difficult to, or it's rare to get a treatment center that has all the groups, but some may have more than others. So the nature of the groups or groups available, and the clients should know, and as you prepare them, to join such groups. Special considerations, what are they? Not all clients are right for a group, very much so. Clients with co-occurring mental disorders, e.g. severe depression, anxiety, may not be able to function well in a group setting. You need to be able to manage the depression until it leaves. So that and then those who are anxious may feel, in fact, the anxiety might increase or may worsen in a group session. So you have to be able to treat the anxiety and prepare them. But if they're still anxious and they think they don't want to be part of the group, then you don't have to impose it on them. Clients with co-occurring personality disorder may need a group with very strict boundaries to avoid a negative group experience or to avoid negatively affecting other group members. Typically, you find some of them, particularly those who don't have dissocial or personality disorder, or some people say antisocial, whatever. We see that is labeling the client. If you have such clients, sometimes they can be very difficult, and some may have other personalities too, maybe borderline, whatever, and they can cause lots of problems in the group. So those ones might need their own separate group, so that they don't affect or influence the others negatively. Each client must be assessed for his or her own individual needs in treatment. You must assess them, get to know what their needs are. As you think of the needs of the group, you also balance it with the needs of the individuals, so that you ensure that during the group session, these needs are met, and that will keep them in the group, and they can really benefit from it, and to help to move them further in the journey to recovery. Special considerations. Continue. Not all clients are right for a group. True. Clients who have experienced trauma, especially sexual abuse, may need a homogeneous group. If you have females who have been abused sexually, even males who have been abused sexually, such clients might not be disposed to sharing in a group. They may want a homogeneous group, maybe a gender-specific group. Or you think also about the culture. They may not be amenable to group therapy because they think that if they open up, people may see them as wayward or they cause the problem. But a lot of things that come into it. So you have to actually think about it and assess the situation to see whether it is proper for them to join the group. Sometimes they resist, and when you probe further, they'll tell you why they are resisting. So it's better you find them in an old, maybe a female group, and you may even need a female facilitator. They may be more comfortable, to be able to share in such a group. And clients in the throes of a life crisis may require more concentrated attention than groups can provide. Yes, those that may need more of individual therapy than a group therapy. And clients who choose not to participate in group therapy should not be criticized or penalized, not at all. If you do that, they just withdraw, and it's going to be counterproductive. And in fact, that therapeutic relationship that you establish, might be scattered at that moment, and you may not be able to get it with that client again, except somebody, maybe another therapist. So if they are not willing to join the group, we should just work on them. But if they have reasons why they think they cannot, please just allow them, just let them be. But don't criticize them, and don't allow the other group members to criticize them, and they should not be penalized because they don't want to, participate in group sessions. Prepare a client for group work. You have screen clients for appropriateness, assess ability to function in a group. There are some of them that are just loners. They are withdrawn, they don't want to talk, even in the world they're alone, wherever they're going, when they're eating together, they will sit, apart from the others. And if you not want to force such people into a group, it will be very difficult for them. And assess the stage of change. Some of them, as Abita said, if they're still in the pre-contemplation, and then you are taken into a group, it may not really work for a group of people who are already in the action stage and also maintenance, and then you're not bringing somebody to the pre-contemplation. It may just disrupt the session and discourage the rest. Assess willingness to participate and give them the opportunity to tell you whether they're actually ready. But if you do your homework well, you are lucky to get even those who are reluctant to join the group, eventually to join when they begin to see the benefits of a group session. There are sometimes, in my experience, some people who don't even belong to a particular group want to come and join the group. And some of them are just people who are seeking attention. Some of them are very domineering, and they want to keep talking. Some of them may even have bipolar disorders apart from the substance disorder, and they want to be everywhere, very noisy. So such ones, you have to tell them politely no, that they don't belong to such group at that moment until they are ready. But if the other group members eventually change them, admit them, then you can. In some cases, if it's very open, it's an open group. And provide information. How group counseling compares with other group experiences class may have had. Some of them would have been 1 or 2 or 3 different treatment centers. In fact, some of them will come and say, I have been to different treatment centers. I've attended group sessions in the US, in the UK, and then they will start criticizing one person or the other, and they feel they know everything. You must have the skills to be able to contain such people. So the benefits of group counseling, or how group might specifically help the client. Yes, if you try to tell them what the benefits are, it's not just for fun that we're doing group or just to socialize for the sake of it. No, but there are benefits of group counseling. And then how the group is structured. Let them know how the group is structured, why they are selected, and the structure of the group, and that everybody matters. And the kinds of issues the group addresses is very important. Can anyone tell us, please? I want 1 or 2 people to share with us the benefits of group counseling. Benefits of group counseling. What are the benefits of group counseling? I want to get from the participants. What might be the benefits of group counseling?
Francisca has her hand raised.
Yes, please. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Group counseling helps one be able to attend to many clients in a shorter time, and also help them share their experiences. That's allowing them to get some kind of support, that there are many and they can always learn from each other and get different ways of looking at their problem.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Does anyone want to add?
Michael's hand is also raised.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah, the group provides some form of support and security and love to members to develop or grow. And it also allows persons who are, well, if I use the word shy, to be active, because each person has a chance to make his or her own opinion or to share according to the ground rules, usually. So people who ordinarily would not express themselves will find the group protective enough to do that, and that helps their growth. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Yes, and some of the other benefits also include things like instilling hope in the group. They're able to instill hope, on the group members, on each other, and that helps them to also know that they are not the only ones suffering from the problem, that there are others. So that is universality. And then also gaining more confidence, giving and receiving support, as Professor Michael said, and then learning from others and providing a safe environment for expressing feelings. That I have this similar problem with somebody else, and I can share my feelings, without any fear, and I think it's self-therapeutic. So these are some of the benefits of the group. Thank you very much. So let's continue. Preparing clients for group work. You have to recognize and affirm clients' expectations. Affirmation in almost everything we do, we try to affirm them. In individual counseling, in the group sessions, and even when you are assessing them for the first time and they're opening up, you affirm them for opening up, for agreeing to open up, to share their experiences, for opening up to you. It's something that helps them to move forward. So affirmation is very key. And ask about expectations, as we said earlier on. Correct any misconceptions. Affirm positive expectations and address and reframe fears. Sometimes some people say, well, you see, I am not of the same culture with the other members. I'm the only maybe African amongst the group, or I'm the only Christian among the group, or whatever. So some fears might come, or I'm the only maybe less educated person among this educated ones, so on and so. Whatever it is, address and reframe their fears. Help them to know that their fears might be genuine, but there are still benefits, and they will not actually deter them from participating in the group session. And then group agreements. This is an example of a group agreements, and you can find some samples in the resource page 5.1. Attendance requirements. You have to have a requirement for attendance, that this is our own group for the benefit of all. We need to get at least 80% attendance or whatever. And the expectations of confidentiality, whatever we say, we discuss here, ends here. It's not a thing that will go about gossiping and then laughing at people, criticizing. No. Whether physical contact is okay, you have to decide based on your culture. Well, thanks to COVID-19, you might not be talking about physical contact at this time, but in at other times, well, you have to decide whether physical contact is okay or not, and depending on the cultural context in which you are practicing this, you have to take that into consideration. And the use of substances. Nobody is allowed to come maybe after taking substances. Nobody's allowed to come drunk, or under the influence of any substance at all, because that may discourage the other members, and that may even provoke, a lot of craving in them, and so many other things that to disrupt the session. It will make, in fact, it will rubbish the session. So you don't allow people to use substances at that time when they're under the influence to come. And then minimum participation requirements. What is the minimum requirement for participation? And then the counselor's punctuality. Sometimes it's not just the counselor's punctuality, but even some of the clients might not always come on time. And as I said, some of them may be attention seeking. They'll wait for everybody to be in the group before they walk in. So that's very key. In the therapeutic community, the issue of punctuality is very important. If you as a counselor, you come late, they are free to raise objection or observe that you are late for the session and you are not supposed to come late next time. And a typical therapeutic community session, you as a counselor will not defend yourself. You just apologize and sit down, but you cannot give any defense. No. So this is very important and key because everybody in the group is important. And then the goals of preparation. Establish a preliminary alliance between client and counselor. Yes, it's very, very key. The client and the counselor before you take it to the group, and that helps them because you already have the relationship with them, as individuals before coming to the group, and you know the kind of people they are, and you're facilitating so that everyone gains and get a clear mutual understanding about the client's expectations. When they have told you their expectations before they join the group, you look at the expectations and ensure that when you're facilitating these sessions, their expectations are actually met so that you can retain them in the group process. And they offer information and instruction about the group. Information and instruction about the group is very, very important. They shouldn't just jump into it without having prior knowledge of what it is all about. So it is up to the counselor to be able to provide them with adequate information and instruction so that they can function well. The goals continued. Deal with initial client anxiety about joining a group. Sometimes some of them might be doing such group session for the first time and they may be anxious. So you need to be able to lay their anxiety, their fears, about joining the group. Present and gain acceptance of a group agreement. So you have all members agree on the agreement that have been drafted, and so that they will guide the group. And if anyone is going out, you can just point them to the agreements you had earlier on, so that everybody feels safe, and comfortable in sharing in the group. We have a small group exercise here. These group exercises, I'll post them as assignments, and tonight I'll post them so that we can do them because we don't really have the time to do them. But we're going to divide you again into groups, and for each group we have like 3 clients that will be assigned to them, and then you will look at the assignment and decide which group is most appropriate for them and why, and how will you prepare the client for the group. For one client, develop a role play. Role play will not be, we will not do that because of the medium which we are doing this exercise, but you will get them later. We still have about, just a minute. I don't know whether anyone has anything to add before Beatrice continues. If there's anything you want to add, or maybe a question before Beatrice takes over. Because I know some of us are more experienced in this. So if you want to share from your experience, please share before Beatrice takes over for a minute. Okay, if you don't have anything.
Samuel's hand raised.
Okay, for a minute, please share for a minute so that Beatrice will take over.
Okay, thank you, Prof. I just want to just give an example that has happened in a group session. Sometimes clients come with a lot of expectations and they don't find what they expect in the group. Counselors should just take note not to force clients to remain in groups that are not working for them. And counselors should avoid assuming that clients are actually benefiting when it is contrary to what it is. Thank you.
That's why it's always good to prepare and get the expectations and prepare them for the group and the expectation before you continue. So thank you very much. So Beatrice, please take over.
Thank you, Moses, once again for introducing Module 5, which is around group counseling. And thank you, participants, for your active participation around group counseling. I have seen lots of your comments. And one of the ones I have seen that is interesting is when one participant says they have a phobia for groups. I think that is a very valid comment. And she says that they become chaotic at the end. And that can be it if we do not particularly set norms from the beginning so that the members agree on the norms that they are going to follow. And that is an important stage in the process of group counseling. And therefore, what your concerns are, they are legitimate, and we will be discussing more about that in the chat. So next, we're going to be looking at the types of groups. I don't know what type of groups you have in your treatment settings. Can we just have some examples of groups you have? Yes, in your treatment settings, what kind of groups do you have? Any one person that has an example of a type of a group you run in your centers? Yes, I see some chats. Yes, someone says they run matrix groups. Someone says they have closed and open groups. Another one says they have relapse prevention groups, and so on and so forth. So thank you very much for those comments. So we're going to just explore a little about types of groups. And there are many, many types of groups. We're going to mention some of them based on certain parameters. For example, in this slide, we are talking about types of groups based on whether the group is static or revolving. Or put in other words, whether the group is closed or open. So a static membership group keeps the same membership throughout the life of the group without new members joining. So that is more of a closed group, which is also called a static group. A revolving membership group has people continually going and joining, leaving and coming in. And the group will continue despite the changing membership. So that's what we are calling a revolving group, which sometimes we call an open group. And I have seen one participant has told us they have such kinds of groups. And I think what I have seen in most treatment centers in my country is actually a lot of centers run revolving groups where clients walk in, others are checking out because their stay in the treatment programs is ending. So there's a lot of that. And each of these group types has its pros and cons. And sometimes it will depend on what is feasible within a situation. The second type of groups or parameter has to do with whether the group has a time limit or not. So we may have groups that are time limited. They have a set number of sessions. And once that period is over, the group comes to an end. But we also have ongoing groups that have no specific end date. So many of the revolving groups are actually ongoing groups. Many of the static groups are usually time-limited groups. Now, good examples of time-limited groups is a group that is looking at an educational component, or you want to set that group together for purposes of psychoeducating on a very specific aspect, maybe assertiveness training, and you just have that for a period of time and you finish and the group is over. That's a time-limited group. But we have lots of ongoing groups that we have in our treatment programs that don't necessarily have an end date. Now, the other parameter for analyzing types of groups is based on whether the group is focused on content or the group is focused on the process. As Moses introduced what group counseling is, he said that it's important to note that unlike a one-on-one counseling, where the therapeutic work is between the counselor and the client only, within a group, the therapeutic work is between the counselor and the members, but also amongst the members themselves. So group counseling does focus on the processes, on the interactions of the members, because that's an important component. In fact, when the participant shares that groups can get chaotic, yes, they can, because of the interaction between the group members, because of the dynamics amongst the members themselves. So what we mean by a content-oriented group, it's a group that focuses on a certain identified topic for each session. For example, you have a group that's going to be doing a psychoeducation session on assertiveness training or on relapse prevention training. And that is the content of that group. So when you meet, the content is clear, you focus on that, members work on that content, and once anything outside that content is considered not relevant, and once you're done with achieving the goals for which you set that group, then that is over. Very common with skills training. Sometimes we have them when we are training families in psychoeducation or even clients. These are examples of content-oriented groups. So the focus in a content-oriented group is focusing on a certain topic, a topic that has been identified as relevant to the clients or maybe to their significant others. Sometimes it could even be to our staff. We have identified a certain area of concern among our staff, maybe self-care among staff. And we have a content-oriented group where we focus on discussing or being trained on self-care. And once that is over, that comes to an end, and the focus of every session is basically the content. Now, on the other hand, we have process-oriented groups. These ones do not focus on content as such. They don't start with a specific content in mind. These ones are more of the here and now sort of focus. I remember Moses mentioned earlier about the skill of immediacy. Immediacy has to do with the here and now. What are the clients in this group exhibiting here and now? That here and now material is what is focused on, as opposed to a specific topic that had been identified earlier. So process-oriented groups are more spontaneous. You respond to what comes out of the interaction at the specific time. So for example, you can begin by asking the client, so how are we doing today? As you check in, some issue comes up and you focus on that issue. And you focus on that issue in terms of that member who brings it up and how the other members connect to that issue and how they interact with each other around that issue. So they are more about the group process more than they are about specific issues that have been discussed in advance. So that's what we really mean. Now, the question here is, what does your agency do? Does it have static or revolving groups? Does it have time-limited or ongoing groups? Does it have content-oriented or process-oriented groups? Can we just have 2 or so people giving us examples of the kind of groups you have in your programs? Yes, anybody raise your hand or put in the chat?
Nothing yet.
Yes, what about any hands that are raised? What do you have in your programs? Are they static, revolving? Are they time limited or ongoing? Are they content oriented or process oriented? Yes, you can type in the chat. You can raise your hand. Yes, anything in the chat, Jessica? Yes, I am. I'm seeing some saying revolving and process oriented. I am seeing revolving, ongoing, and time limited. I am seeing revolving group, and I'm seeing both static and revolving. Thank you very much. So we have got the different varieties, and we might want to think about which ones we want to introduce to enhance our services for our clients. Okay, so now next we are going to look at the phases of group development. Again, I want to go back to that wonderful feedback by the participant that groups can get chaotic. Yes, they can, particularly depending on what we do at each of the phases and how well we manage the initial phases. So in this part of the presentation, we want to look at the phases of group development. By the way, especially when you have a closed group can grow. It grows, as the members become more supportive and cohesive, it kind of grows. And by the time you're ending it, members are actually tight and they're almost running the show without you. And that's where we aspire to go when we have closed groups. It's tricky when we have open or revolving groups. So there are 3 phases. Now, in the beginning phase of the group, what are the issues and tasks that you should work on as a facilitator? First and foremost, it's important to establish or to introduce members. But before I talk about that, I want to just reflect on something Moses has told us. For a successful group, you need to think about the things you do before the first phase of the group. We call them pre-group issues. That's what Moses was talking about when he was saying special considerations about who you should put in a group and who you should not put in a group. The kind of people you should put in the same group and the people that should not share a group. Those are pre-group issues which can actually determine the success of a group through these phases. So if we recruit the wrong people into a group, if, for example, you put survivors and perpetrators in one group, like Moses was saying, if you put people with severe depression, whose emotional status can be a baggage to the other members, if you put people with sociophobia into a group, now this could pose challenges for you as the group moves on through these phases. So let's remember those considerations as important. Now, in the initial phase or the beginning phase of the group, some of the tasks include introducing members and facilitators. That's important. We need to establish and review a group agreement. So why are we getting into the group? What are we looking at? What are the expectations? Again, a participant here has raised something very important. Sometimes members will come in the group with wrong expectations, or not necessarily wrong, but they are not fitting. So when they come into the group, we have a responsibility to explain to them what the group is about, what is the expectation of the members, what are the perceived benefits. I have seen clients in outpatient groups who even come to a group thinking there will be material benefits from that group. And it can be very challenging because as they move down the different phases, they wait to hear the material benefit from the group, and it is not there and they get frustrated. So very early, as we are reviewing the group agreement, let's clarify to the members what is expected, what are the benefits, what will they put in to make the group a success, what can they expect to receive from fellow members, and that will help them in terms of stabilizing in the group. The third point is providing a safe and cohesive environment, and this is important. And part of what will help us in that is actually the norms, establishing the norms. Can you think of some of the norms you might want to establish in a group as a way of providing safety and cohesive environment for clients? Yes, anybody, please share with us a norm that you think would be important for a group. Yes, Baiko?
Yeah, no chorus answer. No answer is wrong. No answer is correct. Don't shout at anybody. Let everybody feel free to say his or her opinion.
Thank you. You have said about 4 of them. Thank you very much. Another participant has raised their hand.
Yes, like no insult, no insulting one another.
No insulting one another. Very good. Any other? Yes, any other participant?
I see Grace's hand raised.
Yes, Grace.
Can I speak?
Yes, please go ahead.
No competition, no comparison.
No competition, no comparison. So we are encouraging accommodativeness, or the ability to be tolerant, and accommodate each other, respecting every point of view, all right? Acknowledging and supporting one another. So we can put in all those norms, things like timekeeping, like Moses said, things like not using your mobile phone in the group session. Things like, it's called turn taking in communication, whereby when it's my turn to speak, you listen to me. When it's your turn to speak, I listen to you. These are basics that we think are obvious, but they're not necessarily obvious. So you need to talk about them, discuss them, and agree on them as a group. Some groups will even decide to put them in writing. And the members can even agree what are the consequences of breaking the norms, so that these are agreed upon by the members. Then of course you initiate the work of the group depending on whether it's a content-oriented group or a process-oriented group. Now, remember, and I should say just before I leave that phase, that this initial phase is very critical in terms of establishing trust amongst the members. So it is important that as a facilitator, you work towards ensuring that everybody becomes comfortable, that everybody begins to feel a sense of safety and security. And one of the ways you can actually do that is to explore some of their anxieties. Sometimes members come into the group guarded with certain fears and anxieties, just encouraging them to talk about them. And as they talk about them, you normalize them and you validate their fears and you reinforce them, remember the affirmations that will actually, and then you set the norms and members agree to support each other. All these can actually help in establishing trust and beginning to make the members feel at home in the group. In the second phase, we are now moving into the actual work of the group. And this is where we balance between content and process. Now, if your group is a largely content-focused group, then you focus more on the content and less on the process. So we are here to learn. We are learning about skills, and the skill we are talking about today is relapse prevention. So we keep our focus on that. Once in a while, there may be some interaction activities that come in. While you will address them, we do not necessarily want to spend a lot of time on that because we remember we have got a content to cover. On the other hand, if it is a process-focused group, which is focusing on the interactions of the members and the issues that are coming out in the here and now, but someone also brings out something on content, then we have to remember that our group is a process group. So we can acknowledge that content need and we can plan to have another session for a content group where we can teach a skill. So we need to balance between content and process depending on what our focus is. The other important point is about being able to notice and roll with resistance. Just like with individual clients, clients in groups will demonstrate resistance. If you remember some of the examples of resistance we gave, can someone remember what were some of the types of resistance that we gave in the topic of dealing with resistance? And because I can't see any one of you now, I will have to rely on and Jessica. Yes, Jessica, please unmute someone and give us their name.
I see Fatima's hand raised.
Yes, Fatima, an example of resistance.
I remember denial.
Denial, thank you very much. So you could be teaching or you could be processing some content. And like Moses was saying, the client tells you those things you're saying are not true. I remember one client who told a facilitator in a group that those things you're saying are not correct. And every time the facilitator would be talking, they would raise their hand and say, no, that is not correct. And the facilitator got frustrated and kicked the participant out of the group. And then the participant told the counselor, I think you have got anger issues, as they walked out. So now you wonder who then becomes the client and who becomes the facilitator. So please notice when the client is resisting by denying. What else can they be doing? Another hand?
I also see Rania's hand raised.
Yes, Rania?
A kind of resistance that maybe he has preservation. He agrees in certain points and he disagrees in other points. He doesn't want to try it. So,
okay, so arguing with you could be a sign of resistance. Thank you. Any other?
I see Eugene's hand.
Sorry?
I see Eugene.
Yes,
hands
Eugene?
raised.
Yeah, the challenge sometimes with they have used drugs and or they've taken alcohol and they come in and you can see that they are talking from their drug use, so or they have a co-occurring mental disorder and they are not being rational, yet they want to answer every question, share everything, and will not going by the norms.
Thank you. And that's an important point you have raised. You will, in your norming, agree whether can client come into the group when they are under the influence of substances? You might want to agree that they shouldn't, because if they do, they could actually be disruptive. The other one is about a client with co-occurring disorders. You might, at the point where you're putting clients in a group, You might evaluate whether that client is suitable for a group or not. And it's possible for a client not to be suited for a group at the beginning, but as they stabilize because of the treatment, they actually become eligible for a group. So let's keep that in mind, and thank you for that. Let's also remember we talked about clients who argue, clients who may actually challenge you, clients who may even just be ignorant and look like they're spectators sitting on the fence watching what's happening. These are all forms of resistance. We need to notice them. And when we notice them, what do? We roll with it. And some of the ways of rolling with resistance is actually using reflections. And remember, we talked about the simple reflections amongst others. The other thing is you have a responsibility in this phase to keep the group focused. So if it's a process group, we focus on the process. If it's a content group, we focus on the content. The other important point, and very important indeed, yourself as a facilitator must model a healthy interactional style. So if you bang the table in anger, you can guess you're modeling an interactional style that may not be healthy. So sometimes you got to keep your cool, and after the group, you go to your supervisor or your colleague and get a debriefing because the group session might have taken a toll on you. So let's remember that as you facilitate a group, you're a model. People are learning from you. If they see that you can contain challenge and not react with anger, you're teaching them that you don't have to react with anger when you're challenged. So these are all important things. And finally, remind yourself that you're a facilitator rather than a director of the group. So you aren't running the group, you're not directing the group, you're actually facilitating. To facilitate means you want to enable everybody to make a contribution. You want to pull up those that are lagging behind. You want to slow those who are running very fast to give space to those who are pulling up slowly. Now, during the end phase, what are your tasks and issues? First and foremost, now, we want to pull together everything that we have gained from the group. So we want to put a closure on the group experience. We want to help members recap and reflect on what they have gained from the group. So as we do that, we examine the impact of the group on each person. We could actually ask them to share what they think or to put in writing or to journal. And this can be an assignment they do, or it can be done in the group, where you examine the impact the group has had on each person. And one of the nice ways to do it is to not wait for the time the group is ending to look for impact. You can even do that at the end of each session. You could ask the members to journal what was the impact of that session on them. So as they learn the art of evaluating the impact on themselves of each session, by the time you come to the end, it's very easy now to concretize the magnitude of what they have gained from the group. And it also helps the client learn that they have a responsibility in the group to themselves as well as to others. The third point is that you acknowledge the feelings that are triggered by departure. Remember, in the initial phase, you are trying to connect, to help the members connect, to form a close-knit group. Now the group has become close-knit, it has achieved lots of work together. Now it is time to end their stay together. This can cause a lot of anxiety to some of the members. Sometimes some will suffer from separation anxiety, similar to what they have in their day-to-day life and experiences. It has been found that clients who have challenges with separation in their day-to-day life will face more challenges separating in a group session. So if a client looks like they are beginning to, to regress to some behaviors they had already worked through, don't get frustrated. It's probably their way of expressing the anxiety around separation. So one of the things you can do as a facilitator is to acknowledge those feelings. You can use reflections. You can normalize, you can affirm, you can encourage, so that the client then begins to realize they can manage on their own. Give and receive feedback about the group experience and each member's role. How do they think they contributed to the group? What do they think the group did for them? What do they think they did for other members of the group? Then you complete any unfinished business. If there are any things that are still hanging that need to be tied up, it's important we talk about them. And finally, and most important, we want to connect with the future. We explore with the clients ways in which they are going to carry on the learning. And again, for this to be successful, we don't begin it in the last phases. We can actually, it's something we can do after every session. Let clients learn to carry home something to do. because this will teach them that they have a responsibility for their own growth and development in the group. So at the end of a group, let that be carried on. Now, the final area we want to look at is how to structure a group session. And the first thing we are reminding ourselves is the value of intentionality in counseling. Remember, even in individual counseling, we said intentionality is critical. And we said that intentionality is about selecting helping behaviors and specific strategies when you have a clear purpose and direction in mind. So you must be clear in your mind. What is your objective in forming this group? What is your goal in running this group? What do you want to achieve? What about the specific session? What is your objective for that session? So that every session, in your mind, you're clear what you're seeking to achieve, and you can evaluate and see whether you achieved it. But at the same time, you must have some level of flexibility, because sometimes you may have some very clear purpose for a session, and then something happened somehow, like this happened one time, and clients showed up with a lot of moodiness and they didn't look like they wanted to say anything, and the counselor got frustrated, and then she asked them, I noticed that today you're looking rather, held back. What might be happening? She asked one client, and then the client said, we lost one of our colleagues. This was an outpatient group. So it's important to be flexible and open, that despite your goals and objectives for a session, sometimes you will need to accommodate the here and now that shows up with your clients. Now, how do we structure a group session? The facilitator ensures that important aspects of the work are protected. Members need to know what to expect from a session, and you need to have what we call beginning and ending rituals. For example, how do you begin your group? How do you end your group? A good example is you can open the group with a welcome, and then you can check in where you ask members how they are doing, how their week was, or if it was their day, depending on how soon you meet. Remind them the group norms and rules, and then you can begin the active work for that session depending on what it was. And then you do a summary and homework, and then you close the group. In the opening and welcoming, we remember to greet each participant warmly. Of course, now with social distancing, there are things we will have to think around. Start the session on time, because like Moses said, when you begin on time, you send a message that the group work is important. Now, you as the leader cannot afford to be late, because if you're late, then you're sending the message that the group isn't important and you're not respecting the participants' time. If you wait for late members to come, you're actually reinforcing lateness and conveying lack of respect for group boundaries and participants. So remember to enforce those norms around time. Now, we have said you introduce new members, you make any announcements, you can have an opening ritual. An opening ritual might just be anything depending on culture. Some people have prayers, some people have anything, like you throw a ball, and when you get the ball, you say something about yourself. So it's really up to you to think creatively around what is an important ritual. Then review the last session. If there was any homework given, find out how it was done, find out how the clients are feeling today, and this is very important to check in. Then check the active work. What is the heart of the session? If it's a content-oriented group, what topic are you covering? If it's a process-oriented group, what are the processes that you're beginning to pick and work on? Now, in summary and homework, we are saying summarize what the group has achieved, and it's important not to do it yourself. Ask the members to summarize. You need to give homework, and you need to reinforce homework assignments. You need to give affirmations to the work the group is doing and is achieving. And you can also ask the group to give any other affirmations that they may know about that you may not necessarily know about. And then check in with participants if necessary. And then in terms of closing, again, you can have a ritual. You might ask members to say what they have learned in the group or what they are taking away from the group. Some people ask you to put it in writing. Others say that you write on a little thing and put it inside your bag. So whatever ritual is exciting and works for you, just have that for your group. So I think that's the end of our presentations. Thank you very much. We're going to be interacting much more in our chat after this. So I wish you a great time, and I hand it over now to Jessica.
All right, well, Thank you for being here, everyone. I don't have anything else to add aside from we have the recording this time, and I will be sending that out shortly after this meeting as soon as it's ready. And I'll see you tomorrow if Beatrice or Moses has anything else.
Yes, maybe just to say that tomorrow is our final day of UTC 4, after which we shall take a one-day break and then begin UTC 5. There was a member who requested whether we can be having Saturdays as a break as well. Now that UTC 5 is equally big, it could take 5 to 6 days. We propose that we continue with the teaching on Saturday or learning on Saturday, but after UTC 5, 6 and 7 are lighter, and therefore it will be possible to take the Saturday break for curriculum 6 and 7. So thank you for that.
Thank you all for your active participation and for the assignments you carry out. Thank you very much. Sincerely appreciate.
All right. Well, bye everyone. Have a great night.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye, everyone.